Hello everybody, I am Keaton and this is Kinetic Catholic Ministries back with another video. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter video and I've talked about this before, but I just wanted to come on and add some more commentary to it because I think that it is something that, number one, is very tied with the mission of Kinetic and with what we do here and our mission here. But then number two, I think is a commentary that isn't talked about enough. And that is Generation Z. And so we are going to very briefly have a commentary on Gen Z from a Catholic perspective. And a few things about this. Number one, my goal is to provide somewhat of a defense of Gen Z. And number two, this is subjective, so I'm very open to you disagreeing, but I just think that it's kind of necessary. Number one, in Kinetic, what we do is we serve Gen Z, right? We are members of Generation Z. We are young people serving young people. And then number two, we do a lot of social media content. And so it's important that we have a kind of commentary on it. Number one is the mental health problem. And listen, I can't dive too far into it because that's not my realm and I don't have the authority to do that, right? Like I don't have the authority to sit and explore all the ins and outs of mental health. What I do have the ability to say is that among young people, at least for the year 2022, and it's a little bit deep and we're just jumping into it because I think that it's something that has to be said, but a little bit of a warning. If you're not into like deep content right now, then maybe come back to this video later. But among like causes of death for young people, suicide and mental health related issues is jumped murder for number two. That's crazy. Like that's insane. And so mental health is a big problem in Gen Z. And we are like one of, if not the most depressed generation we've ever seen. And we can explore the ins and outs of that, but that's not my authority to. What I do have the authority to say is, number one, Gen Z is absolutely a generation that needs prayers because prayer has power. And I think that even if we are young, we can pray for our fellow peers. And it's not to say that prayer or that praying for people fixes someone's mental health problem, right? Because it's all in God's timing, and that's not true, and that's not what I mean to say. What I do mean to say is that prayer does have power, and so Gen Z is a generation that needs prayers. But number two, a big kind of stigma with Gen Z is that we are addicted to our phones. I think that it's important to understand that for all of us young people, we were handed a screen at a very young age, and we became attached to that. Like we became psychologically used to that. And so I think that if you put any generation in the shoes of Generation Z, they would also be addicted to their phones in a very unhealthy way, right? And so I don't think that you can blame individual members of Generation Z for it, but I think that we can look at it as an overall cultural issue and something that we need to work tangibly to go against. Like that's part of the mission of Kinetic, right? Like social media is something that can be used so poorly, that can become so addictive. The internet can be used so poorly. It can become so addictive, but there's also so much fruit, right? Like we have the ability to evangelize with a click of a button. How incredible is that? Do you know how many saints would have loved to have that ability throughout church history? Like we have the ability to spread the good news with just literally in 2 seconds to anyone in the world. That's amazing. Social media can be used for so much good. And like that's part of the mission of Kinetic, right? That's part of what we as Generation Z, like by young people, for young people, need to be making clear is that, yeah, at this point, social media is a problem. It causes a lot of mental health issues. It causes a lot of addictive issues. The reality is it's something that does exist. Like it's something that is a part of the lives of young people and is not going to not be a part of young people's lives anytime soon. So rather than coming to a young person and telling them and kind of condemning them for the use of social media, for the use of their phones, what we can do is we can come to a young person and we can encounter them there and we can show them through a nonverbal witness, like what we try to do at Kinetic, that there is a positive way to look at our screens and pop culture in general through the lens of the ability to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Like that's incredible. That's incredible. And so I think Generation Z deserves some credit for that. And then lastly, I want to bring up this point about Generation Z. It is no secret that Generation Z has a lot of very opposing opinions to that of the Catholic Church, and that there are a lot of young people that don't know Jesus, which is a sad thing. Like we know that. I think that something beautiful about Generation Z that we're seeing in the young church, right, that we're seeing pushed in the young Catholic Church, is that we are the most passionate generation. And maybe that's subjective, and I'm happy for any of you to disagree with me. But I think that Generation Z, when we see something that is important to us, and when we see something that we feel is right, we are very passionate about that. And that's not always about the right things, right? That's not always about the correct things. I understand that. But there's something to be said about that. And there's a movement right now in the Catholic Church among young people where there are young people on fire for the church. And those young people are incredibly passionate about Jesus because they know him, right? And they're bringing that passion into other parts of the culture, into other parts of the culture of Generation Z. And so I think that those 3 points, right? The quick little tidbit about mental health, the quick point about social media, and the point about the passion of Generation Z are the 3 things that I really just wanted to highlight in this video. That yes, we as a generation, we get a lot of hate, and I understand it, but that's not the way to make people fall in love with Jesus, right? That's not the way to make young people fall in love with Jesus. Our goal and our mission, in Kinetic, but also just outside, like in our lives, right? In the life of a Christian, is to encounter a person and to show them the face of Jesus Christ to the best of our abilities. Young people just need to meet Jesus. Like, they just need to meet Jesus. And once they meet Jesus, once they know Jesus, their heart will be set on fire. I mean, that is the movement that we are seeing in the young church, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that Generation Z deserves some credit for that, because the reality is, we say this all the time at Kinetic, we are not just the church of the future. Like, we hear that all the time. Like, young people are the church of the future, right? Like, yes, that's okay. Yeah, we are the church of the future. But we're so much more than that. We're also the church of the now. Because what we do, the missions that we do, the way we encounter people, impacts the Catholic Church right now in a very tangible way, right? Beyond just the future. We are the church of the now. And so there's a beautiful movement of that church of the now, of young people impacting the culture right now. And so I think there's hope. There's a lot of doom and gloom when talking about Generation Z, and I understand it, but I think there's a lot of hope. And I think that that's something absolutely beautiful that we at Kinetic are trying and striving very hard to highlight. And so I just ask that if you take anything away from this video, it's to remember a few of those points and to pray for our young people in this country, but also throughout the world, because Jesus wants the hearts of young people just as much as he wants the hearts of anybody. He just wants us to fall in love with him. It's that simple. And he's knocking on the doors of our hearts to make that happen. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. This was Keaton of Kinetic Catholic. Don't forget to check out our social medias that are in the description down below and click the red subscribe button. It's super easy. The bell right next to it. And then press the share button, share this channel video with your friends and family. Make sure that they know about Kinetic Catholic Ministries, what we are trying to do here. Also, we could not be doing this if it wasn't for you guys and your viewership. So we very much appreciate you, like genuinely appreciate you. We are praying for you. Drop any prayer requests you might have in the comments down below. This was Keaton of Kinetic Catholic Ministries, and we'll see you all next week.